Sure, Sonible's Learn Bundle is just $49 right now, and spoiler alert, it's really good, but that's not why I'm excited. I'll show you exactly what I mean in just a moment, but first, this video is sponsored by DistroKid. Follow the VIP link in the description down below to get 7% off an already amazing price to distribute your music to the world. Now I should mention that $49 price tag is for a limited time, so if you want to grab it, follow the link in the description down below. Now what I love about the 5 plugins in this bundle is they're not only powerful mixing tools, but some of them are incredibly useful learning tools. Let me show you what I mean, starting off with Learn EQ. If you've ever seen a Sonible plugin before, then you'll know the usual starting point is to select the type of source we're working with. In my case, it's an acoustic guitar, and then you'll go ahead and hit the Learn button and let the plugin spend a couple of seconds analyzing that source. Let's do that now. And now that it's completed its analysis, it's created a corrective EQ curve. You can see that here in purple, and basically it's boosted some frequency ranges where it thinks it needs it, and it's reduced or attenuated some other parts. And this is unique to the source that it's just listened to. And often this is a very good starting point in my experience, but you still want to kind of tailor this to your own needs or your own sort of tastes. And the first place where you get that control is with these 3 sliders here. We've got this body slider, we've got this picking slider, and we've got this air slider. And as you can see, especially with the picking slider, this has been tailor-made for an acoustic guitar adjustment. If we'd applied the EQ to a vocal, for example, we'd have some different sliders. In this case, we'd have body, nasal, presence, and sibilance. Or if it was a piano, we may have these ones: warmth, body, presence, attack, and sparkle. So it's got controls which are suitable for that instrument. And I think this is the first point of learning, because first of all, it focuses you on certain frequency ranges which are important for that instrument. You're not kind of fiddling around trying to find them. You can easily, for example, see, look, if I want to increase the picking sound of this guitar, I'll just push this slider up, or I'll reduce it if I want to make that picking sound quieter. And after a while, you'll probably take note of where those frequencies are. In this case, for picking, it's around about that 2K range. So you can either just use this in a very simple way to shape the sound of this guitar, or you can begin to learn about how the guitar sound is actually made up. I think it's incredibly useful. Now, of course, we have these default positions, but we also have 2 other styles that we can choose from. Over here, we can select the warm style. So if we select that, then you'll see basically it's like a preset which has boosted that body and it's reduced the picking sound. The guitar now sounds like this. And if you wanted to start off with a bright sounding guitar, you might choose the bright style. And here it's just boosted the picking and the air just a little bit, and it's sounding like this. Now, of course, these sliders are for broad controls, but it's done the really fine stuff with that initial corrective curve. And you can decide how much that curve is implemented using the intensity control over here. So all the way up, it's fully implemented. All the way down, it's not being used at all, and only your changes are being employed. Let's have a listen to see how the sound changes as I push that intensity up. So for me, it gets a lot kind of cleaner, and it's just usually going to be an improvement over the basic sound. But as I say, you can use it as much or as little as you want. Now, of course, the sound of this acoustic guitar will sometimes change as the performance moves on. So in different parts, this EQ curve may need to be slightly adapted. And to do that, you would employ the dynamic control. So I'm just going to push the intensity up full for a moment so you can clearly see what's happening. And I'll push this dynamic control up, and you'll see that it's changing with the performance. I think this is incredibly important for kind of maintaining that sound throughout the performance. Now, you may be looking at this and thinking, this is all very well, but I'm a little bit more advanced than this sometimes, and I need a bit more than just these 3 sliders for my guitar. Well, that's fine. You can do that by going over to the advanced screen. So in the advanced screen, we've got more traditional controls that you'd normally see with an EQ. You can just grab a band here like this, move it up and down. You can see this one relates to that body range there of the acoustic guitar. But using, say, the wheel of my mouse, I can go ahead and change the cue. So I can get a little bit more surgical with that body. Or I could, find something in the mid-range that's a bit honky, and again, I could use a very narrow cue and really get in there and correct things using this EQ. And as I say, you can employ as much or as little of that corrective EQ as you want. So with that down to 0, then essentially you're just using this as a regular EQ. Now, I think this is wonderful in terms of going from being a beginner and using very basic sort of controls here to shape your sound and just moving on with your mix without getting bogged down in the technical details. But as you learn more, you've still got the controls here to get in there and make really fine little tweaks. So compression is definitely a source of confusion for many of you, and I feel like this Learn Comp plugin can really help in terms of its visual feedback. Let me start off just by playing my acoustic guitar again so you can see the waveform as it passes by. And so the grey part here is the before and the red part is the after. That's going to be an important thing to understand. Now we do have 3 different flavors here to begin with. We've got soft, neutral and hard compression. So let's have a listen to those 3 and see how they're affecting the guitar. So probably what stands out there immediately is I almost certainly wouldn't use hard compression on this acoustic guitar. Most likely I'd be using soft or neutral, but it's good it's there. There are some circumstances where you may need compression to be that hard. I also want you to notice, by the way, that there wasn't much volume difference between the 3, and that's because we have auto gain switched on. So it's compensating for the compression. So we're really hearing the effects of the compression there. Sometimes you'll just hear things get louder or quieter because of compression without really hearing what's going on. So I think that's useful to begin with. But the interesting thing about this plugin is I think the kind of learning with it really starts to happen when we go to the advanced tab over here. So let's go over there, and for the first time I'm actually going to use this simple control that was in the assisted tab, which is the compression control, and we'll see what that's doing. And you probably noticed there that the main thing it was doing was changing the threshold. Now, just in case you don't know, the threshold on a compressor is the level at which compression starts. So anything below that level is not compressed. The signal's not affected. It's only once we go above the threshold, compression starts to happen. That's a very basic thing that must be understood with compression. Now, with the soft, neutral, and hard sort of presets that we had here, you can see that the threshold was changing. You can also see the ratio is changing a little bit from a 1.6 to 1 ratio all the way up to a 2.9 to 1 ratio. Now that controls just how much the signal is reduced once it goes over the threshold. So that's what those presets are doing. But what about the other controls that you normally get confused by? Attack, release. Now, those really are a source of confusion for people, and I think this plugin becomes very useful as in terms of a learning tool for these controls. Just take note that when I hover over the attack label here, it turns yellow. When I hover over release, it turns blue. That's going to be important as we go ahead and take a look at that waveform again. I'll hover over attack as we look at it. you can see some parts have turned yellow, and that's showing us how that waveform has been reduced by the attack. Let's make some adjustments to it. So a long attack, much more of the transient comes through. Short attack, and it really clamps down on that transient. And the same is true for the release, which is going to be in blue now. So I really feel that just the visual nature of this plugin is really quite helpful for seeing what these controls do to the waveform. Now, there may be some purists who say, look, you should use your ears, but I've definitely found, while I've been teaching people about compression, that seeing what is happening with these controls gives people a clue as to what they should be listening for, and really helps them overcome this whole compression mystery. The reverb plugin in this bundle is not so much a learning experience as it is very, very intuitive. The basic controls, things like size to make our room bigger, the position to make the source closer or further away, and the width, well, they all kind of speak for themselves. At the moment, I've got it applied to this acoustic piano, and it's sounding like this. Now, if I really want to tweak this reverb, then I'll head over to the advanced page over here. We've got controls like color, for example. This makes it brighter or darker. We have a clarity control. This helps to separate our source from our reverb, and that can be very nice indeed. We've got modulation. That is really nice to add a kind of a bit of character to our reverb. We've got a mono bass control, so anything below this frequency is going to be in mono as far as the reverb is concerned. And then we've got high pass frequency, just to get rid of some of those lower frequencies, which is often something I will do with a reverb. If I listen to this at the moment all by itself without the source material, it's sounding like this. And we're getting so much of that high frequency information because of this color and high pass control here. If I blend it back in though with the piano, it sounds much nicer. And just quickly, I'd like to let you know that this is the standard reverb, but there's also a reverse mode, sounds like this. We have a bounce mode, which sounds like this. And then this freeze mode. Learn Unmask is definitely one of my favorite plugins in this bundle because it takes something which can be quite tricky to resolve and makes it super easy. Now, if you don't know, masking occurs when you've got two sources which share a similar frequency range and they just kind of cancel each other out in the mix. You hear neither of them clearly. And what this does is it helps to move one of them out of the way of the other one when it's present. In this case, I've got it applied to a guitar and I want it to move kind of out of the way when there's a vocal present. Now, sometimes you could do this with a compressor. If you do that, however, you'll just be lowering the whole guitar signal when the vocalist is singing. In this case, I just want those frequencies which are shared by the two to be reduced. And that's what you can see here on this display. The blue parts are where the vocal is present here, and you can see how they're reducing those frequencies on the guitar. Well, we've seen enough. Let's just have a listen to this little section, and we're going to hear a part where the guitar is playing first of all, and then the vocal comes in. Have a listen.
I should have learned. I should have run away.
Now, if I've done this right, you shouldn't really be able to hear too much of what's happening. It's one of those things that you don't want the listener to be aware of it. You just want it to be happening, and things should sound nice and sort of separated and clean. But just in case you are wondering just what's going on, let's have a listen to the guitar all by itself, and I'll turn the vocal down and see if you can hear those frequencies ducking. It's kind of subtle, so listen carefully. Now, just in case you really can't hear that, what I'm going to do is click this button here, the duck button. That's going to enable us to hear the parts that are being removed when the vocalist sings. So let's have a listen again. So now that you kind of understand what's happening, then all you really have to do is use these very basic controls, the sort of presets here, light, balanced, heavy, and the actual ducking control, which is just going to control how extreme this is, and just adjust this to taste. And I would say push it up to the point where you can hear it and then back off from that point. Now, before you release your music, you want to make sure you get the loudness levels right. And that's where the final plugin of this bundle comes in useful. But before we get into it, I'd like to remind you, if you are releasing your music to places like Spotify, Amazon, Google Play, etc., follow the VIP link in the description down below to our sponsor DistroKid, and you'll get 7% off of your first year of membership. Learn Limit is a super useful plugin for making sure that your track is at the right loudness for the genre of music that you're working in. Now, when you release your music to, say, a streaming platform, you want to make sure that it's not suddenly quiet compared to other tracks around it. Human beings tend to feel that louder things are better, quieter things are not as good. So you want it to compete with tracks around it, whilst still being appropriately loud for the genre of music. Not all genres of music need things to be super loud. That's why I selected acoustic as a profile before I hit the Learn feature here. Let's have a quick listen to a before and after. I'm going to bypass the plugin. I'll play a few seconds of the track and then I'll switch it on.
I should have known it from the start. I shouldn't open up this heart for you to tear it all up.
So just a little bit of limiting happening there. You can see that at the top, but the track is still kind of breathing, and that's appropriate for this genre of music. And I know that the loudness, for example, and the peak level is at a good value because I'm getting these nice green ticks here. They are indicating all is well. If they weren't well, if I adjusted this gain down, for example, like so, oh look, the loudness is not good, I'm getting the yellow exclamation mark. Super easy. And if you want to know why it's yellow, well, just click on the information button here and it'll say, look, the loudness is below target, increase input gain to reach the recommended level, which is what I will do. Now, beyond this, if you want to adjust other sonic values like the bass control here, the resonance, the saturation, the transients, I'd recommend you make use of the level match feature over here. That's going to make sure that when you make changes, things don't actually sound louder to you. We can be distracted by that, so it's very useful that that is there. Now, when you actually want to reach a specific target with these values, then you can go over to the Advanced tab. When you click on that, you'll see over here that now we're getting actual meter readings. So before, when I was playing this, I'm getting -9 laughs, 7 as the loudness range. It's kind of like the dynamic range that, and then this -1 dB as my maximum peak. And that's all good for this genre of music. I know that for many of you, you have a limited amount of time in your home studio and you want to use it to make music, right? Not simply be learning all the time. And I think that's where this bundle comes in very, very handy. Yet, it doesn't stop your workflow. You can use it in a very quick way to get really good results. Or if you want to use it as a kind of a learning tool and really squeeze the best out of these plugins, you can do that as well. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Don't forget, it's $49 right now, so take advantage of that sale price while it's there. I'm Mike. I hope you're well, and I'll see you in the next video.